Welcome to our Collaborate Muscatine event. It's fantastic to see this kind of crowd out here today. So thank you everybody for being here. Super beautiful day. It's great of you up here to be on the top. And we appreciate everybody being here. 2024 Muscatine Community Summit. That's what this is all about. Bring the community together. The session will celebrate Muscatine's momentum and collectively prioritize for the future progress. My name is Rich Dwyer. I'm Senior Vice President for Corporate Affairs at Kent Corporation. Housing and education has been a focus for Muscatine for several years and continue to be a top priority. As an example, 3 senior housing projects have been completed back in 21-22. The city recently completed a housing study basically to help point us in the right direction. And think about the other projects, especially on the housing with Harbor Commons that's developed over a number of years, the Habitat for Humanity and what they've done for the community, the Mulberry Neighborhood Project that's been going on, and Prison Industries Home that's coming into town. A lot of different things from a housing standpoint. Education is just as important. School enrollment is down, mostly due to less babies being born. Unless we can find something to put in the water, we'll have to do something about that. Our city population has declined by about 1.9% between 20 and 23. So basically, we have some things to work on. We'll hear more from our speakers today on these important topics. For the most part, what we start out with some context, if we look at the agenda, about Collaborate Muscatine and highlight Muscatine's momentum. And then we'll focus on some priorities identified. We'll talk about intersectionality between housing and education. We'll hear from a couple of panels talking about specifically about housing on the first one and education on the second to get a better feel for what's going on for the community. But most importantly, we want your input, your thoughts, and your ideas. That's what we're after. We want this as a community event. We want to have your inputs across the board. You'll have that time to discuss at your table and to set at the beginning to help us collaborate, prioritize our future. Before we get started, we have a lot of community faces in the room today. Appreciate having everyone here. Let's take a few minutes to introduce yourselves at the table and share how long you've lived in Muscatine and your favorite thing about the community. Appreciate everybody having good thoughts and good ideas as far as looking at what your favorite things are in the community. Our next speaker is going to be Gage Houston, the General Manager for Muscatine Power and Water. So if you would, Gage, make your way to the table.
Thank you, Rich, and welcome everybody again to the 2024 Muscatine Community Summit. My name is Gage Houston. I'm the General Manager of MPW. So Rich did a great job of teeing up why we're here today. But you may be wondering, how did we get here? How did we get to this point? What caused this group of people to schedule an event like this? And what gave us the audacity to invite such an impressive group of people to join us at this event today? Well, let me take a shot at explaining. There we go. When I moved into this role back in 2019, Sal Lobianco invited me to a monthly coffee event with some key community leaders and organizations throughout Muscatine. At the time, it was just an informal coffee meeting, getting together, sharing a few key topics from their organizations, and really about just building and maintaining the relationships with those community leaders. It was very powerful. But around that time, there was some significant change in those leadership positions. I was taking over for Sal. Carol Webb at the time was taking over for Greg. Angie Johnson was taking over for Jim Hayes at the hospital. Clint Christopher was taking over for Dr. Reeby. Eric Reeder at the time was taking over for Greg Jenkins at the chamber. So there was a massive transition. We had a lot of relationship building to do. But as we started to have those conversations over coffee, we realized that we wanted to have an even bigger impact. We wanted to bring more structure together. We wanted to be more intentional about our efforts and have a bigger impact on the future of Muscatine. And that is really when the concept of Collaborate Muscatine was born. And somewhere along the way, somebody had the wisdom to invite Charlotte to the group, which made it even bigger impact. So the idea of Collaborate Muscatine was born, but there was still a lot of work to be done. I mean, first and foremost, we had to come up with a catchy name. I mean, we all liked the name Justice League, but none of us could decide who would be Superman. So we decided to move on from that. We ended up landing on Collaborate Muscatine because I think it really strikes at the heart of what we were hoping to accomplish with this group. It's through our joint collaboration that we really could make the biggest impact. We all manage a very talented, dedicated groups of people at our individual organizations, but how can we come together to align our efforts? So I want you to imagine this picture in the background of this rowing team. Now imagine that rowing boat was filled with 7 very talented, experienced rowers. But imagine if they were wearing eye masks and earplugs and they couldn't see and hear each other as they rowed. Now, because they're experienced rowers, they'd be rowing their little hearts out and they'd certainly be making progress, but not the kind of progress that they would make if they were aligned. So now imagine if you remove those eye masks and those earplugs, and imagine those rowers working together in alignment, seeing and hearing the feedback of their team members, listening to the verbal commands of the coxswain, and seeing those oars fly perfectly through the water in perfect synchronization. Imagine how much more efficiently that rowboat is going to move. So I want you to kind of keep that image in your mind as we go through the summit today, and even beyond today, of how much more efficiently we can operate when we're working in alignment and synchronization. So with that visual in mind, though, this was a purpose and the how we came up with for Collaborate Muscatine. And it really comes down to how can we collaborate our efforts together to maximize and accelerate the impact of the initiatives that make Muscatine great. So even after we came up with the formal structure of Collaborate Muscatine, our evolution continued. We developed a joint marketing team to help highlight some of the great positive stories about Muscatine. We conducted more focused discussions amongst our team. We shared strategic plans. We discussed key initiatives within our organization and the community. And we sought opportunities to leverage our resources together to have a bigger impact. And even still, there was a desire to think even bigger. And again, I credit Charlotte with pushing our team on this topic to think bigger. How can we have an even bigger impact? Now imagine that rowboat if everybody in the whole community was rowing in alignment and in synchronization. And it was that point that we decided to think bigger and pull more of the community into this discussion. We also decided to bring some more serious talent onto the Collaborate Muscatine team. We asked Rich Dwyer, Kim Warren, and Brandon Bullock to join our team, and they've had a huge impact. And Brandon Bullock in particular has helped us work through taking some of our vision for what we wanted to accomplish and putting it into a more concrete structure with some measurables and some action plans for the future. You'll hear a little bit more about that structure shortly. So why are we all here today? As part of our planning activities, one of the biggest challenges that we identified was how do we get alignment across such a wide array of stakeholders in this community? The best idea we could come up with was to get everybody in the same room and start to be a part of the same conversation. And so that's why we put this community summit together. Rich did a good job walking through the agenda. Well, why are we here really, to me, comes down to 3 things. First is awareness. You'll hear from some of our best subject matter experts in this community on these topics today. Hopefully they'll spark something inside of you. And then alignment. We'll be sharing our top priorities that our team has come up with for our community and share some of our key initiatives to address those priorities. Our goal is to help to drive alignment around the community on those priorities. And then take action. We want everybody in this room to walk out of here with a commitment to action. As an old friend and colleague once told me, well, we got the talking part done. Well, we've got the talking part done. Great communities are not made great because of great ideas alone. It takes people implementing those ideas to make a community great. I think Muscatine has a great history of people taking action, and that is what it's going to take to keep this community going forward into the future. So what do we ask of you today? First and foremost is to just listen. Again, you'll hear from some of our best subject matter experts in this community. You'll probably hear a lot of common themes if you've been a part of this type of conversation over the years, but hopefully you'll pick up on a few new things along the way as well. Second is just to engage in the discussion. As Rich mentioned, we will have some time to engage in discussion amongst your team as we go, as well as share some feedback with this group going forward. And last is that commitment to action. At the end of the session, we'll be asking you to take a commitment for action to move these initiatives forward. Before we get into the discussion about the opportunities for improvement in our community, we wanted to take some time to really set the stage about the positive momentum we're seeing here in Muscatine. A community simply cannot improve if the residents within it do not have pride in that community. And in Muscatine, I think we have a lot to be proud of. We, of course, have a very rich and proud history in this community, but there's a tremendous amount to be proud of about what's been happening just over the last few years and what's coming in the years ahead. So we've developed the momentum in Muscatine in a lot of different areas. Momentum in economic development, momentum in community improvement initiatives, momentum in housing development. All this momentum that is pushing Muscatine forward. So to highlight some of those big projects and initiatives, the Staff Community Foundation has put this video together that will talk about some of those bigger things that have been happening in the last several years. as members of the community, sometimes it's easy to miss the forest for the trees. We all see these projects happening. We hear about them as they come along. But to see them all lined up together in a video like this really highlights just how many great things have been happening in Muscatine over the last several years. Let's see it. So I'd like to take just a few minutes to touch on just a few of the projects that were mentioned in that video to really highlight how Muscatine comes together to make things happen in this community. The first is a mulberry clinic. Now the concept for how this clinic operates is very unique and special, and it goes back decades. But when this community identified that we were in need of a new clinic, it really came together to find a solution. The result is the recent opening of this $20 million project with $11.2 million coming from community donations and local grants. $11.2 million. The RAGBRAI event we hosted in 2023 brought 20,000 plus riders through our downtown. And though we weren't an overnight stop or an end stop, we put on one of the best RAGBRAI experiences they've had. This took a huge community effort to put everything together and left a very positive image of Muscatine to those 20,000 plus visitors. All of us are excited to see the Musco Sports Center start construction on this $7 million project. This, what will be the largest indoor sports center in Iowa, will be a great community amenity, but it will also drive significant economic improvement by bringing more visitors into Muscatine. Another joint effort, this came with $2.7 million in donations from private donors, another $3 million from the city, as well as funding from the county and the state to make this happen. The Illuminate event, just went out and saw it again this year a few nights ago. It was fantastic. Crossroads helped put this event together. While this was an impressive collaboration from the beginning, you all probably remember the unfortunate incident with the sabotage or vandalism that took place last year. And again, it was an opportunity for this community to come together, and I think raised over $80,000 for this community and these great causes last year. You saw in the video 3 key riverfront developments. The Kent Corpse revitalization of the McKee Button Factory, the merged development at Carver Corner, the build-to-suit development coming up at the Hawkeye Lumberyard site, as well as many others. But those 3 projects alone represent over $40 million of investment in Muscatine's riverfront. The Spark program the district has put together the last few years has been a fantastic opportunity for the youth in Muscatine by providing engaging and educational experiences. And the district has done a great job of bringing in professionals from our large employers to provide those experiences with the youth in Muscatine. The MCC Career Advancement Center, this $10 million investment was specifically designed to fill gaps in our local workforce, to develop skilled trade positions, to support critical activities in our community, as well as provide great paying career jobs for those young students. And then volunteering. Muscatine has always walked the talk when it comes to volunteering and giving back to their community. And in 2023, across Muscatine County, over 19,000 hours of volunteer time were logged, which represents over $500,000 in free labor volunteer investment in our local nonprofit organizations. And again, these are just a few of the great initiatives that have been happening in Muscatine, and they highlight how this community comes together to get things done. And it certainly is a lot to be proud of. So with that backdrop, today we'll start digging into the topics of the day, and our discussion is intended to engage each of you to be a part of keeping this momentum going forward for Muscatine, to make Muscatine an even better community in the years ahead. Next, I'd like to bring up our next presenter. Please help me welcome to the stage a tireless community leader, an award-winning writer, somebody I consider a friend, and the fastest talker I know.
To deliver on Gage's last comment. So, Gage, we appreciate what you and your team at Muscatine Power and Water do. They do a fantastic job, and they're incredibly community-oriented in the decisions they make and the impacts they have. And so, just grateful for the work that goes on in your office. I'm grateful to be part of the Muscatine community. I'm grateful to live here, and I'm grateful to work here. And I'm really excited about this conversation that we're going to have today. As we begin to look at current state and community priority identification, as Gage started to introduce this morning, I want to start with a quote that Keith Porter sent me about a year ago. We know that there's no power for change greater than the community discovering what it cares about. And I think that's a great place to begin to celebrate this morning. As Gage indicated, this has been an evolution in priority identification and how we can work better together and support and enhance Muscatine. We often see our work as independent, and in fact, contrary to that, it's very interdependent in the success of our community, the success of our stakeholders, which are our children, our neighbors, our coworkers, our businesses, and our organizations. We can't solve or improve complex problems in silos. And that was so indicative in the video that we just saw of all the projects and activities going on within our community and the partnerships it took to achieve that. So as we began to evaluate current state, what we found was often in an attempt to be supportive of various initiatives, sometimes we did that without focus, and which may have unintentionally either muted some outcomes or had ill timing for some important projects. Now, to provide an analogy, if this is someone and their health is being muted in certain ways, right? They could be stronger, but they've got issues going on in their brain, they've got issues going on in their heart, they've got some stuff going on in their legs and so forth. And we all say, we want to go help that, we want to bring resources to address that. And we all choose to try to address that in various paths. The outcome is often not a great deal of impact. You can see we still got issues in the heart, we still got issues in the brain. We could have made a bigger impact had we done things differently. So on a concentrated intervention, if we say, hey, these are the areas that we need to work on first, and we spend all our resources and intentions toward that, the outcome is a much healthier body, right? And now we've got resources and time to address the other issues as well. And so as we look at things, how we spend our time, where we spend our time, because some of those issues, if we don't take care of them, start to cause us to feel ill or have not as great a strength in other areas as well. And so how we do this and how we do this smartly makes a big difference. We have the opportunity to collectively be more strategic in our efforts, as well as in prioritizing the breadth of impact we're having in those decisions. Every resource decision we make as a community or in regard to community enhancement has powerful community trade-offs. Now, what we know, as in any community, we have limited resources. We have powerful community, or we have limited resources, and those limited resources are money, time, expertise, and influence. And sometimes we expend community resources on downstream outcomes rather than affecting the upstream interventions. And I'll give you an example of that. For instance, we have rising food insecurity, so we have more hungry children. And we need to feed those hungry children. But addressing the supply side of failure of housing would likely lower housing costs and increase more dollars within household budgets so they can feed their families themselves. But what we instead do is it's like we have a hole in our roof and we keep replacing the rain-drenched drapes rather than fixing the hole. And as a community, we can start to look upstream rather than serve downstream. As a community, we are asking what energizes and strengthens us fastest? What has the greatest breadth of impact? What can be fast-tracked? And how can we together further amplify our focus and success? And I want to pause and note, as we focus on priority identification today, everyone still has their own agency in their decisions on how they invest their resources and support. And we believe this conversation shouldn't change current funding and commitment streams for the good work going on. We actually rather anticipate that if we increase our focus, in time we're going to enhance those revenue streams for alternative work and projects through the efficient utilization of our resources, much like we saw in the health analogy, where if we do things well, we're going to open up even more money to do other things even better. It's been shown in communities when dollars are used strategically, it magnifies the impact of those dollars. So we began to ask, how can we better amplify impact working even closer together? And that brought us to this. Collaboration, when we collaborate, the math improves. 1 + 1 = 3. How do you prioritize? What does alignment look like? Gage talked about this a minute ago. Often, alignment looks like this if we aren't talking together. right? Hey, we want less hungry kids. We can all agree on that. What does that mean? What are we going to do? What's the timing? And so as part of this conversation, as we decide what's important for our community, where we're going to work, how do we align? How do we better define those? And that's part of the system we'll talk about in a moment. And we're currently faced with these community trade-off decisions. So back to project timing. When we serve as a president, it has a cascading downstream impact or adverse negative impact on our community, the lives of our children, the lives of our neighbors, and sometimes those adverse impacts are for years or decades. And so how we choose to affect those decisioning now and look at those projects can make a big difference to the long-term success of the folks that we live next to and with in our homes. Now, a couple of key questions we ask ourselves as we challenged ourselves to think a little bit. In the past, have we focused as a community together on priorities or been sporadic? And how successful has that been? And hypothetically, if community stocks were traded on the stock exchange, why would we or would we not invest in Muscatine? That challenges to think, what are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? And what are the implications of those issues? So with the help of Brandon Bullock from Han, we began to think about how we could create an enduring opportunity prioritization system, much like what they use for their ocean management system, to create better filters and discipline around identifying and addressing our collective priorities. Now, what this means is now we can pull levers in an order that will create the greatest impact today on tomorrow. And to help define our collective journey, we set out to identify our North Star to guide us. Now, what we found as we started to look were words like collaboration and innovation and prosperity and collective and equitable just kept coming up as we discussed it. And so those we worked into the North Star as we started to define what that should be. And we knew for a fact that Walt Disney had already taken the happiest place on earth as his North Star. So we felt like this was the next best thing. But in empowering shared prosperity, wealth creation, stability, serving across our community, making the Muscatine the ideal place to live, work, and employ. And we often say live, work, and play, but we think playing is part of living. And we're leaving out employment. And we know at the core of a strong community are strong employers and people that want to choose to open their businesses here. So that's our guiding principle of the decisions we're making. We then looked at elements that make up every strong community and the intersectionality of those issues. We began by evaluating the hierarchy of needs and identified levels of unmet foundational issues. We evaluated the Muscatine Community Heart and Soul statements were the voice of our community and who said what they cared the most about. And we took those all into consideration. We looked at reams of community facts, observations, and perceptions and how they fit and how they overlapped on the various elements of a community. We discussed upstream interventions and downstream, both financial and social impacts when issues are left unaddressed. We took a look at all the various elements, and as part of that, we identified, and it looks a little bit like this, and it's on your table, but we identified what are the elements that make up a strong community, and then we identified, of the issues that we know about, what elements do they affect, and that was part of our decisioning as we went through this process. Now next, I want to share a few stats that we chatted a little bit about. To support our 2025 priorities, Rich mentioned earlier housing and education. We're going to hear a host more of stats around that. But first,
do you know this is the biggest housing shortage we've ever had in the history of America? In 2018, it was 2.5 million. Today, 6 years later, we're looking at 6 to 7 million. Now, how do we get here? Some basic data for you to be thinking about. In 1970, we were building 418,000 units every year for entry-level homes. That has dropped to today roughly 55,000. By the way, 410,000 new properties we're building. Today, 55,000. So I sat there and said, why would it decrease? Has population decreased? Of course not. We had 200 million in 1970. We got 340 today.
So this is a nationwide crisis, but our community can be stronger and better if we come together. To look Our stats look just like the stats he talked about. This is single-family housing, and there's a stark decline in the building of new housing, and a stark increase in the cost, which is pricing out homeowners. Owning a home is becoming increasingly expensive, and we're not able to get people to buy and build wealth as a homeowner. We know the impact on children experiencing housing insecurity. So often when the budgets get too tight, they start having to move. The top line is graduation rates for children that are housing secure. The next line is graduation rates for children that are housing secure but on free and reduced. And the next line, the lower line, is for children that are housing insecure. Look at the graduation rate difference. This was done 10 years ago by Minnesota. They're getting ready to redo the study. They think the impacts will be worse because of COVID. So that's what the difference on housing insecurity can mean. Teachers need housing. We know 24% of all teachers in our county don't live, or of all teachers in our school don't live here. And 70% of teachers that are under the age of 30 at the high school don't live in Muscatine. We see the intersectionality of these issues. Can you see how housing affects education? How education can affect housing? I may not have a certificate. I may not be able to make enough money to afford some things. Like, there's intersectionality, and we're going to talk much more about that today. But as we evaluated, just as Rick said, we came down and said housing and education seem to be the ones that have the breadth of impact and the strongest intersectionality that we want to work on in 2025. We want to, if we invest well in both of those elements, we're going to have a profound financial and social return on our investment. Further investments will allow for more property taxes, household spending, construction injections from cash into our community. We're going to see business growth. For education, we're going to see more dollars flowing to the schools. And from both, we're going to see curbing of costly downstream adverse outcomes for our neighbors, our children, and our businesses, because we are inhibiting our growth right now. From this point, we began to further hone our focus, and Naomi's going to talk about that in just a moment. But a quick story before I close. There was a little boy anxiously awaiting breakfast one morning at his grandpa and grandma's house. As his grandma took the eggs out of the fridge, she asked the little boy how he liked his eggs. How he liked his eggs prepared. And the little boy smiled and he said, in brownies. Ladies and gentlemen, I think together we have the ingredients to prepare an even better recipe. I think we can act and think differently as we approach these opportunities. And if we collectively and efficiently do so, we will get to enjoy the brownies rather than just being satisfied with the eggs. So with that, I want to turn over the stage to Dr. Naomi DeWinter. I have the highest level of respect for the work Dr. DeWinter does at Muscatine Community College for our students and for our community. Thank you very much.
So before we get to the panelists, and so we're going to have two back-to-back panelists next. One, experts in the space of housing, one experts in the space of education. I want to tell you a little bit more and give you some examples of this management system that both Gage and Charlotte have talked about. And it is still a draft document, and so we don't want to get ahead of ourselves and share with you what it looks like. So I'll do my best to talk through some of the points. The conversation and discussions that we have today will inform our management system. And so it is not ready to be shared yet, but it will be soon. So as Charlotte said, our North Star for Collaborate Muscatine is empowering shared prosperity, making Muscatine the ideal place to live, work, and employ. We have two targets, and these are our priorities. That doesn't mean that we won't add additional priorities as we get some of these figured out as a community, but they are housing and they are education. And I think one of the things we want you to leave with today is to see how these two are connected. One cannot really succeed without the other. In the housing space, our target is to build 2,000 new units in the next 10 years. 2,000 new units in Muscatine by 2033. And we have established 2 AIPs, annual improvement plans, that will help us get to this ambitious goal. The AIP 1 is availability. So we're increasing the availability of appropriate housing to support building individual, business, and community wealth. This is this shared prosperity that we're talking about, our North Star. And then our AIP 2 is attraction. Improve our systems for attraction and retention of residents. Just to dig a little bit deeper, in the target goal of housing, again, build 2,000 new units in Muscatine in the next 10 years, addressing AIP number 1, which is availability. One of our goals, and we have about 2 or 3 goals established right now under each of these AIPs, is to decrease the median age of our housing stock. You may know this already, but the median age is 1958. So our housing stock is old, one might say, outdated, needs a refreshing. We also know that our population growth in Muscatine has pretty much been stagnant since World War II. Not a lot of incoming residents in Muscatine. We also know that almost 10,000 people a day who work in Muscatine commute to Muscatine. And those are a couple of statistics that drive what we're trying to do with this availability AIP. Now, in relation to education, our target goal is to increase our K-12 enrollment by 5 percentage points. Now, the baseline is the enrollment of this year. And so over the next 10 years, our goal is to increase that number by 5 percentage points. Our 2 AIPs within the education space deal with preparation, so improving student success at all levels to prepare them for and propel them into successful careers. We have wonderful careers right here in Muscatine. And I know that many of you, if you are in an employment, have employment responsibility, you are looking for highly qualified, highly talented positions because there are openings right here in Muscatine. Our second AIP is perception, and that is to improve the perception of Muscatine's education system, both inside and outside the community. When we get to the education panel, we'll hear about some of the wonderful opportunities that are available to students right here in Muscatine. We're focusing on education for a couple of reasons. We know that 61% of Muscatine high school graduates attend college within 1 year of their high school graduation. So that leaves 39% who are not attending college. That number, that percentage, has been really stubborn for the last many, many years. What's surprising is when students graduate, 83% of them tell us they have intention to attend a college or university. 83% say they want to, 61% actually do. That's the gap that we're trying to address. We also know that there are gaps between students who are on free and reduced lunch. They attend college at a much lower rate. We know there are gaps within our Latino population. They attend college at a much lower rate. So to tell you how we plan to address some of these AIPs, how we plan to address some of these target goals, our panel will share with you their ideas, their progress, and if possible, we will allow for questions as well of the panelists. But if we do not have time, because I know we've got a lot of information to cover, please reach out to us. Let us know What's the plan for taking questions?
We've got a number on the tent cards.
Thank you. There's a QR code?
No, there's a telephone number they can text.
Phone number that you can text if you have a question that you'd like us to address. If we run out of time to address your question today, we'll be sure to get back with you in the next few days.
All right, thank you guys so much. My name is Rachel Pohl. I'm the Executive Director at Trinity Muscatine. And I think before we start talking about some of our future projects here, it might be a good idea to just pause and look at a recent focused community effort here that's obviously pretty near and dear to my heart. We have the, here we go. So as many of you know, we just recently opened our Mulberry Clinic here in October, and we started seeing patients. I think that the clinic here really is a great example of the history that Muscatine has of really having a focused team approach when we're all trying to get something done and have an initiative that we want to work on. I think this approach is great for a lot of reasons, but mostly I think it's wonderful because it really allows for some built-in sustainability. We have a lot of people that are bought in and want something to be successful. You also have a good way to make sure that you're getting you're really meeting the needs of the population. And I think what you'll hear from the rest of the panel and in the education panel, that that's what everyone wants. They just want to make sure that what they're working on is what the community needs and wants. And so I think that some of these team approaches really allow for that sort of organically. And lastly, I think that it makes sure that we have the right partners and the right people at the table. And so that's something that we've seen through Collaborate Muscatine, and something that we've seen a lot through this project and some of the projects that we'll continue to hear about a little bit later today. And the reason why I think that a lot of these the focuses of health and housing and education are coming up so early in this process is that they're so foundational to the health of our community and the health of each of us. Charlotte had this hierarchy up before, and I'm just presenting it again just to show, if you apply these same ideas to a community rather than just the individual person, housing, shelter, safety, education, they all are so foundational. And so it really requires us to focus on those pieces first. Some of the opportunities that are higher up can sometimes be a little bit more maybe fun to talk about, but we know that if we don't really fix these foundational needs of health, housing, and education, they'll continue to come up. And so I think that the goal is to be able to present on some of those opportunities today. And I think that the housing and healthcare might feel like two very separate ideas, but in a real way, housing is healthcare. We see some really strong correlations between the health of individuals, the health of communities, and their access to adequate, safe housing. We see those opportunities here locally as well. Housing with insufficient ventilation and heating have been connected to increased asthma rates. We've seen impacted, especially with pediatric and children, we see impacts to developmental and developmental health as well. And so poor housing qualities have been associated with increase in developmental delays as well as decrease in academic success. And I think it makes a lot of sense too, but we see a correlation between poor housing or inadequate housing and an increase in medical utilization and hospitalizations of individuals in a community. And so for a lot of reasons, it makes sense for all of these pieces that sort of fit together, even if you might think that housing and healthcare aren't directly correlated. And I think that a lot of those pieces fit in well to the shift in healthcare that we've really been focusing on more, which is that of population health. So rather than trying to meet the individual needs of patient A and patient B and patient C, you really step back and think of what external factors could we try and make a difference on here that would impact everyone in the group. And so some of these foundational pieces, we'll talk a little bit more about housing and education, of course, though, are those external factors that we talk about. And so living environment, educational level, access, healthcare, all key. And I think that having opportunities and conversations like this allow the clarity to navigate those next steps. And certainly from a healthcare perspective, excited just to be a part of the conversation.
So I want to take a perspective of housing in relationship to business and how that intersects with the business side of things. You look at all these logos here and all the businesses, and this is by far not everything that's in the community. But when you think about these in the screen as well as everybody else and all the businesses here and the businesses in the community, they have one common theme that tends to go with every one of them. And I think it's pretty accurate that they all want to grow, right? Everybody wants to grow in their business for the most part. And that's what we strive for. And it's not only growth in financial, but if you have the growth in financial, what's the next step? Well, you want to accelerate that, correct? You want to grow more. What's that take? Well, it's going to take more employees. And we have to have more employees. And when that happens, where are those employees going to come from? How do we continue to grow this business across the board if the employee base is low and not strong enough for all of us to have the people that we want to work to grow our business on a continual basis? So I think it's important when we look at it from a business perspective that when we talk about housing and how that's going to impact, granted, we can bring them from outside the community. That 10,000 that comes in, that's where that gap's coming in right now that help out in the business side of things for employees. But why not get them to live here? What would be wrong with that? And to help grow this community even further is part of what we want to try to do. Now, when we look at this as a community, and from our business at Kent Corporation, we try to look at it as a whole, as a community, to be the best community that anyone would want to live and work and employ. And so when we look at that, it's more than just the housing. And we look at this and we support a lot of these organizations. You see Kent Corporation name on a lot of the different things that we support in the community. And there's a strong reason for that we want to make sure that we're building a great community for all. Because it's all going to impact every one of us. So when we start with the top one, first and foremost, the stability and safety, right? Everybody wants to live in a safe environment. Everybody wants to live in a safe community. And you think about the way things have been in the past, there was some issues around the community as far as some drug issues that's gone around, and I give the credits to the police department and things that's been done over time to really clean things up. And there's been a great effort towards that. And it continues. And so we want to support both the police and the fire as far as for the community to keep us very safe. And I think that's kind of the priority one that we all need to consider with a community to grow a community. But then we take it a step further. We want to live in that safe community, but we also have the health and the well-being as we talked about. It's a natural as we all want to stay healthy, correct? Of course we do. And then we also want to thrive along with that. So I think that's an important part. But we also want to be having a great education. With what we have in the school system, we have that. And there's an opportunity to be a part of a very strong community is that education piece. Economic impact with all businesses in town, aid in supporting each other in so many ways, creating economic impact, tenfold of what we can do on our own. So it takes all of us, all the businesses working together, all the businesses supporting the community, and all the different things and all the initiatives that we have. Attraction and retention become a key element in keeping employees in the community and to raise your families, all of our families. And then have the luxury of a 15, 20-minute commute to and from work. Sure beats an hour-long fight in traffic, does it not? In fact, I've always looked at as far as all the different things that get involved in the community, I can go anywhere from Kent Corp in 15 minutes and make it. Now, I might speed a little bit in some things. Try not to. But it's just amazing to have a community that you can be anywhere in this town within a 15-minute drive. That doesn't happen very often. And working as a community, that's a phenomenal avenue to have. In fact, I looked it up online, and it actually said it's a 17-minute drive. So I must be a little faster than norm. But that's how the business interacts. And that's how we at Kent Corporation really try to strive and support the community and all the things that we do. And we want to continue to do that and have others join in with those things to really support these efforts. Housing and education are both extremely important for all of us as we continue to move forward.
Good morning, I'm Jen Royal Goodman. I'm the Community Development Director for the City of Muscatine, and so I get to work on housing a lot, and I get to do the drive part here and talk about the stats. So and fight with the clerk. So housing has been a discussion in the City of Muscatine since I came back to town in 2015. And it's always been a talk about what do we do? And I think that gets to be, it's this big issue. It's such a major issue because it affects everybody on an individual basis as well as the community as a whole. It impacts the community vitality today, tomorrow, and into the forever future. But it becomes one of those, where do we even start? Fortunately, there's a state law that says you start with a comprehensive plan. at least to understand some of the issues. So the comprehensive plan is intentionally set up to evaluate the qualitative and quantitative data and set policies for what a community is going to work on to address a variety of issues, but housing is one of them. And then, and the goal of that plan is the same as every other plan or initiative that's up here on this list. And that is to provide an understanding of the demographics and qualitative data so that policymakers, planners, and developers can anticipate what the true housing demand is for the future. For us, our comprehensive plan, our last comprehensive plan was completed in 2013, and that actually set the stage for the 2017 housing study, which we don't take it at the housing study. Like if you go to any community, they do housing studies. We take it a little further and we focus more. So we have a housing demand study. What is the demand? What is the housing type demand is more or less the question that was being asked, which actually enabled us to create Ignite Vitality through workforce housing. The first actual plan that established numerical goals to be completed within a certain period of time. Those goals, just so you know, were to develop 300 units of housing and improve 900 units of housing throughout Muscatine County within a 3-year period. I'm happy to say we actually did succeed on that front. But at that point, we're moving rapidly, and so then now we need to understand better the more detailed analysis of what the market is doing and where we need to go, which led us to our 2023 housing market analysis. And that actually gives us more data, but it also gives us some specific strategies to employ to address the gaps or barriers that were identified, which leads us back to the new comprehensive plan initiative. The current comprehensive plan is underway, and which is common standard practice to redo the comprehensive plan every 10 years. But it's the long range vision for the community. So all of these initiatives take community input very seriously, and the goal is to get that information and set what does the community want to be in 10, 20, 30 years. And this way the policymakers can adopt policies and support actions with the finances, with the staffing to say, this is where we're moving towards. And it's based on what everybody sitting in this room and everybody outside these walls can tell us that this is where we want to go. Collaborate Muscatine is accelerating that because it says, we know we need housing. We need a range of housing to get to where we need to be. And so, what do these studies actually tell us? Good news is we have a really consistent and strong home ownership rate. For more than 30 years, it's ranged right around 70%, which is higher than the national average. And so, got short on time. So we also have had limited development. This chart shows development since 2017. The spiked years are the multifamily years. And over this period, we've developed a total of 580 units, with 274 of those being multifamily, which was truly the result of that 2017 study, which showed developers there is a demand for housing that will get occupied, and it has led us into the future development as well. So the cost of housing, as we all know, if you listened to the news yesterday, you heard a report nationally about the rising cost of housing and housing cost burdens. Anyways, locally, the rental rates have increased 25% since 2017 for 2 and 3 bedroom units. That means that resulting in approximately 25% of all households being cost burden. That's homeowner and renters. The share of cost burden renters earning less than $100,000 a year. Households earning less than $100,000 a year. 45% of these households are cost burden in rental housing. We have the 3rd highest rental rate in the state of Iowa. Even though our housing stock is typically older than those communities that we compete with in terms of affordability. And then the home ownership rate actually has increased 45% since 2010, according to the Federal Reserve, making it unaffordable to many homeowners that 39% of households earning $100,000 or less are housing cost burden. And then Naomi talked about the high rate of in-commuters. What are we doing with all this information? Again, housing is fundamental to community development, and the availability and quality of housing within the community directly impacts the overall health, stability, and economic vitality, and is a crucial factor in creating a thriving neighborhoods and fostering strong sense of community. And good housing is essential to a well-developed community. So after the 2021 Housing Summit, IUDA Director Durham requested that we initiate a pilot project in a historically disadvantaged neighborhood that would use federal funds to incentivize private development over time. We selected the Mulberry neighborhood, which is demonstrated in this map, and that has the goal of, we developed a partnership. We took that $1.8 million state grant and parlayed that into $11 million worth of investment, 83% of which is focused on improving the quality of life through housing initiatives, housing quality, increasing home ownership, improving walkability, supporting housing development. That 21 unit complex that was in the video is in this neighborhood, and there's additional support in building single family homes for first time home buyers, specifically targeting teachers, and then stabilize and engage the families who are often lower income, lower educated. The challenge we face now is how do we collaborate to develop new units that to attract a portion of those 9,700 in-commuters, it's different, to be our neighbors rather than just our coworkers. And what are we doing about it? We have a number of things underway right now. Gage talked a lot about the positives. I would say that there's a national movement for a 15-minute city, and I'm so proud that we are a 15-minute city without even having to try. But we're also doing other things, promoting infill development through the sale of properties at a discounted rate. We're creating a pattern book to incentivize individuals and small developers to build on those units. We're expanding home ownership through increased down payment assistance funding, as well as NCSA, Habitat for Humanity, the foundation. They're all building single family homes on those infill lots. And again, updating the comprehensive plan so that we know where we're going and what the community wants.
All right, I'm Brad Bark, Mayor of Muscatine, also President and CEO of the Greater Muscatine Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Thank you everybody for coming and good morning. So I have 4 slides I'm going to talk about really briefly. So a couple projects that are happening right now is you have the Merge project, which is on Carver Corner over here. And that's going to be a 56 unit complex that's going up all market rate apartments. And there's indication of a second one also being built after this first one. So very great retention tool for the Precision Foods and Pet Group. There's going to be commercial space on the bottom. So just wonderful things happening, keeping that momentum going. Next to the Norbert Becky Bridge over here, you have a build-a-suit site, a 65 unit market rate apartment complex as well. The big idea happened from meeting with 11 to 12 H&I young professionals that indicated that they want to be downtown walkability. So we were able to get everybody together, and that's why this is happening. And that's also going to have a potential restaurant overlooking the riverfront as well, which is really exciting. And again, a great retention tool for H&I. Out by the Fridley Theater, Palms Theater, there's 2 12-plexes going up, market rate also. A gentleman that works at John Deere named Adam Gilliter is investing in Muscatine. I think that's pretty fantastic. Some statistics as well, from 2018 to 2026, there's been $126 million. Now I say 2026, these are the projects that are going to happen. $126 million. Now, to talk about the overall global impact from a capital investment, just with all the corporations, from 2014 to 2018, $443 million in capital investment. From that time through COVID to 2023, $1.2 billion of capital investment. So far, the projects that we know that are going to be finished in 2024 and 2025, we're already at $553 million, you guys. So wonderful job to each and every one of you. So perception, we talked about perception. The perception that I've heard and many of you heard, there's nowhere to build in Muscatine. Well, that's false, and I'll tell you why. Perception is absolutely everything. Andrew Fangman, who's in here, I saw him walking around in orange a little bit ago. There's 200, he created 7 maps to basically break that perception. 200 undeveloped existing plots of land. You have a potential of 300 to 1,700 new multifamily units, or anywhere from 2,800 to 6,200 half-acre single-family homes. I think that perception's broken. I think that's wonderful. And these maps that he created takes the guesswork out of it. You have your sewer lines. That went by quickly. Okay. I'm gonna move on. So it takes a lot of the guesswork out of it. So real quick, couple statistics I want to share is that the top left one is from 2018 to 2023, 335 units have been built. The ones that are planned in 24 and about to be finished in hopefully 25, 26, 273, that's 608 units. We have a potential project, couple projects that would have 152 units as well. So you take all that, you have all the buyers in Muscatine are split up into 6 categories, age groups. And 64% of all the buyers fall into the 24 to 40, or 34 to 43 year olds, 44 to 58 year olds, 65 and up. And why is that important? Because our population growth at the bottom left, those 3 that I circled right there, that is those groups. Our population has grown in those 3 categories. They are the ones buying. Very important. Last thing to connect it all is in order to have people move to Muscatine, we need to create experiences. And in order to do that, with our beautiful downtown, we have over 1 million visitors a year that come to our downtown to shop, to eat, to enjoy events, amenities. Our shopping retail went up $20 million from 2021 to 2023. Pretty fantastic. We're in the top 3% in the state of Iowa for retail sales. Our entertainment is still a focus as well. We have the Mississippi River. It's the greatest resource that we have, and we're trying to focus on investing on a city standpoint as well. I think that's going to be great, creating a welcoming community for voters, and then also trying to focus on riverfront activity. We have the Musco Sports Center, and the last thing is dining. Again, creating that opportunity for restaurants downtown, restaurants on the riverfront, and these are items that we are working together collaboratively to invite people to want to actually live in Muscatine. So many great things happening.
Thank you to the panelists for sharing your area and either what's been happening in this space or why it's important for us to focus on housing in particular. And Brad, I thought it was interesting that you mentioned perception within the housing space, because perception is actually one of our target goals within the education space. So you see how these are all connected. We do have an opportunity for you to ask a question via text. So I want to encourage you to do that during this panel and also the next panel. I'll have a chance to ask some follow-up questions. That's my role as a moderator. So where are areas that we could grow, expand, or build on the existing strengths? I think one of the great things is we're working from a strength perspective. Where do you see areas that we can build on strengths to grow or expand our efforts? Rich, you want to start us off?
Sure, I can start off on that. So one of the things, and you've heard of some of the statistics of our housing inventory, and one of the things that's really surprising to me is that 50% of our housing stock today is older than built pre-1939 and earlier. 85 years old on these housing inventories. That's a phenomenal number to where if you get people to move into these housing, 50% of our stock at that age, you've got fixer-uppers. You've got some with issues. Are we going to have those people come in to take those housings on and have that risk out there? It's going to be difficult. And some of those are old and dilapidated. And I think there's an opportunity for us to look at some of those older ones, looking at the infill of the lots that are sitting empty. How can we work on things to improve the housing numbers by building on those lots. Think about it. The roads are already in place, the sewers are already in place, the water's already in place. When you're looking at a new development, you gotta put all those in place, and where's that money gonna come to pay for that? Well, it's on the lot when you purchase a lot. These infill lots, all that's been in place for years and years. And if we could find a way that we can build housing or get the housing stock put in place, I think that would make a world of difference for the Muscatine community. Now, they still have to be at a price point. That's one of the issues when you go out to these developments and you've got a price point that's, to build a house today and pay for that lot, you're probably $300,000 to $400,000. That's a tough market to fill. Especially you have a lot of these younger people that want to come in and want to be homeowners. They got to start somewhere, and that's usually on that older inventory. Or if we can figure out a more cost competitive and put a house on that lot, that infill lot, that's maybe in a 250 range. So I think that's an opportunity for us to take a look at.
Right?
I go back to experiences. We need to continue to create experiences, and here's why. Our 30-mile radius, so typically for our benchmark cities, our 30-mile radius for them, they have about 70,000 to 90,000 population. Our 30-mile radius of population is 360,000 people. So it's easy to drive to the Quad Cities, to Iowa City. So we need to create opportunities here that people want to come and live here and work here and be employed. So I think that's definitely a main focus, and focusing on that Mississippi River as a resource as well.
Rachel, can I follow up with you on when the clinic was built, or even when the clinic was being built, you had opportunity to recruit new docs and professionals to that clinic. Can you talk more about what impact that had, the new clinic, and what you were able to bring to Muscatine?
I think the clinic project has really helped a lot of employees there feel a sense of pride in where they're working. And I think that, one thing with having having a clinic that was sort of becoming outdated, the healthcare workflows have changed so much since the initial clinic was put there, that being able to recruit physicians or other providers, nurses, MAs to come into a space that really fits with how they've maybe learned how to do their job, where they feel more supported by the environment that they are working, has been really helpful for us. I think that we're able to see the connection between housing and healthcare, even from a recruitment standpoint as well, because not only were we hoping to have a new space to show new providers as we try and bring them into our community, but the impact of having appropriate housing for them to also look to when they're in town for their visit, when they're interviewing with us, always comes up and is a really important factor. And so I think this really leads nicely into the conversation between housing and the clinic, and how a lot of these projects all are connected in so many different ways.
Jody, you mentioned a figure, $100,000. The way I understood it, correct me if I'm wrong, is if you're making annually $100,000, you are still cost burdened if you are renting or owning a home. Is that, what part did I not get correctly there?
So 25% of the households in the community earning $100,000 or less are currently experiencing a housing cost burden, and that number is different for owners, which is 39%, and 45% for renters. So that means they're paying upwards of 30% of their monthly income on rent or mortgage-related costs. That would include, on a mortgage, that would include insurance, utilities, obviously your mortgage payment. Now, to dig a little deeper into that, 42% of the homeowners in Muscatine actually don't have a mortgage, and 19% of those homeowners are still housing cost burden due to insurance, taxes, maintenance costs. So
I think that figure, in my mind, $100,000, it goes a long way. But I'm probably a couple of decades back, right, where that was actually, something that you could raise a family on. But I think those in our minds, if you're anything like me, we have to readjust what those figures mean and what a family sustaining wage means in Muscatine.
yeah, and I think that, part of that obviously is taxes. We have a huge discussion about taxes and the Muscatine tax rate. I'm just gonna, if you want to go back to the 2017 housing demand study, and it does comparison, I didn't update it for today, but we actually are the third lowest of our comparable cities. And cities within the region, including Bettendorf and Davenport. So the city's tax rate is not the highest everywhere. So, but the thing is that the cost of services Kent or the city or the county increase just like the cost of living for a household do. So one of the ways that growing cities like Bettendorf don't have to battle with that is that they're growing, right? They spread that out amongst more people, because it's not every household you add that adds a firefighter. It's not every household you add that adds a teacher. It's you get to a certain number and then you have to increase services, but the cost of the basic services you have today still increase every year for the same reasons the cost of doing any other business increase. And so that is one of the big reasons for the need for growth. I mean, it's interesting that we have stayed about the same, right, over decades. The other piece of that really is that we actually have a need for additional housing just because our population has stayed relatively the same. When our housing market, when our household size decreases, which it was 2.7 persons per household in 1990 and decreased to 2.46 in 2020, that means you need almost 1,000 more houses just to house the same number of people. And we're building 500 a decade. So our goals are audacious, don't get me wrong. Like the goal of 2,000 units in 10 years is audacious, but I do think we have the capacity to do it because we just have to show we do it. And I'm going to take a jump back to your first question about the strengths we have to build on and what can we do with that. I think one of the things to do is to tell the story, which is I get to drive 15 minutes to anywhere, right? The other day, I'm always running late, but I was running late to an appointment and I was, you know, the timer goes off and it says leave now. And if I leave now, I got plenty of time. But I know that in my head. So I leave 10 minutes later and I still get there on time. So, and I didn't really speed. Tell me. So I think that, you know, it's that story. It's that the experiences your child has in the school. It's the new clinic, which I think is fantastic. I don't, you know, and it's providing feedback, like, because I think that the other thing in our community is we're all open to taking the feedback of what experiences we have that maybe aren't the positive ones, but we have to tell this story. At one of the housing summits, I think it was in prep for one of the housing summits, Ben said to us, like, nobody lives here out of pity, right? Like, nobody lives in Muscatine out of pity. So find what you like and tell your coworkers that don't live here. We went to a leadership Muscatine, and that was one of the things. He's like, I really thought it was just this old river town, right? And until I came to work here and people started talking to me, and now he lives here. So it's all good. That's my just.
What is one area that you would give attention or resources to move our community forward?
You want me to just jump in there?
Sure.
I think the one area we do need to focus on is similar to what Rich said earlier. It's the rehab. We have to find a way to put some financial resources to supporting the efforts for homeowners to improve their houses. And it could be the current homeowner, it could be the new homeowner, putting tools in place that help create modern housing out of existing housing stock, because it will always be cheaper to keep the old house than build a new one.
Rich, what would you say to that?
I'll throw out a what if. What if we were able to come up with some dollars in the community and look at those particular roles that we need to fill in the community? Thinking teachers, thinking nurses that are tougher to find, and it's tougher to have the housing and things along that line. But what if we figured out a program that we could offer out to those type jobs? If they come to live in Muscatine, we'll give them some down payment assistance say, just for a number, $25,000 for a down payment on a house to start their family. If they stay for 5 years, they don't have to pay it back. Thinking that if they stay for 5 years, chances are they're going to stay for the long term. But just things like that. What else out there that we could do as a community that really sparks in getting the people wanting to come and live here? I think something like that, or it could go further. It could go for new employees or whatever it might be, offer up some kind of incentive and try to figure out what does that look like. And I think as a community, we can do that. We can figure out some of those things. We just have to put our thoughts together and figure out a game plan that can make that happen. So that's just one idea to try to come up with.
Brad and Rachel, one thing?
Yeah, all this is exactly what we need 100%, but one of the big things, you can't forget about the infrastructure. So if we want to continue to grow, we need to make sure we invest in our infrastructure too. Water, sewer, power, that's really huge. Definitely is going to be a main focus as well as we move forward.
I did just think the conversation around experiences and how each of our areas of industry really support that is huge. I think obviously from a healthcare aspect, I think we're always just trying to think about how it can feel easy to access care there and how that just supports the overall perception of the community. And I think that housing is really one of those items that we're hoping that through the experience, we need that additional housing. And so making sure that we're all keeping that portion of it top of mind and hoping to increase the need.
Thinking of taking some questions or some feedback from the audience. This is a very large room, so it may be not the best idea, but we're just going to go with it. Oh, thank you very much. Yes. No, scratch that. I have actually some text questions, which I was thinking in my head, how am I going to get to these? Yes. Do you want to?
Would you like me to read it?
Yeah, I would.
Go ahead.
Like,
Okay, so this question says, I love how we are focused on housing and education. What initiatives can we take as a community to ensure we create an inclusive community where we live and work?
how do we create an inclusive community? Rich Kent Corporation has been awarded the top 100 employers in the country, or some great awesome award.
There's a lot of those things.
The top 100 employers.
And we're in a great position as far as a growth company. We've got a lot of things going on for the organization, and it's drawing the people in to try to get them into that. So trying to figure out how do we make that happen for all. It's a challenge, even for that, to get those people to come in. One of the things that we as an organization, we require our VP level executives to live in the community. And I think that's very important, that we support the community in that sense. And that's a big part of us as a community, as part of the organization, as well as supporting a lot of different projects throughout the community. I'm not sure if I quite gave out the question.
Good. Rachel, I know you've been doing a lot of recruiting. Sorry, we took your microphone. Yeah. You've been doing a lot of recruiting with the new clinic. Any thoughts on how you've talked about or how you've learned about how we need to create an inclusive community?
Well, I think honestly opportunities like this, where you're really seeking feedback and bringing the message out, I think doing that on a smaller level, even within our own organizations or our own, volunteer groups or our own homes. But I think as a community, we can continue to try and do that by offering more opportunities like this and making sure that we're, Charlotte talks a lot about agreeing versus aligning and making sure that a lot of those, that we're aligned in what we're working on and that we're talking about it. I think that the best way to be inclusive is to make sure that you're hearing from as many voices as possible. And I think that that's something that we've all tried to bring, back to our own organizations and then bring forward to the community just by these type of asks.
Thank you.
Okay, this might be a question for Jody, I'm thinking. Are there plans to address conditions of current low-income rental properties? How can we, as community organizations, help with this in particular?
The pronouns, they're always pointing up and saying. it's a focus of much discussion and attention, recognizing it needs to be done. And how do we bring along the private investors that own those and provide resources that balance public resources with the responsibility of being a private property owner. We, on some of the lowest income stuff, so one of the things I oversee is the public housing agency, and so we deal with a lot of landlords. Well, I oversee the rental registration project too. But in the public housing side, or the voucher side, you have a little more incentive because we can withhold payment, or actually we're required to withhold payment if they don't make certain fixes and maintain it at a certain level. But it's also hard because there are a range of individuals that need housing that may not treat housing the nicest sometimes. So it's a balance of how to do that, and it's one we struggle with on a day-to-day basis. But we start with setting the standard and enforcing the standard, and then enforcing that consistently, so that if one Inspector A or Inspector B comes, you get the same result. Or if landlord A calls or landlord B calls, they get the same response on why it's important. We have established property codes that do establish that minimum, and hopefully over time we can raise that up a little bit.
I think the second part of the question was about other organizations. Is there a role for other organizations to support?
It depends on your role, right? If you're working with clients, make sure you're holding them accountable for their behaviors as well. One of the things when I first started at the city, it was, well, they tear up the houses. Well, if they're tearing up your property, let us know, because they're no longer going to be entitled to a voucher either, because they have a responsibility. And we started a rental education class specifically for that. It talks about what your responsibility as a renter, not just what your benefits are, right? Like, if you don't take care of the property, don't expect to get your deposit back. But if you take care of it and leave it in reasonably good condition, you should get some of that deposit back. If you work with property owners, I would say lean on us as the community development department in terms of helping you understand what the expectations are, and knowing that we're not trying to be disciplinarians. We're trying to be incentivizing and assisting to help get a quality client. But I'll go back to something that you hear a lot when you talk about rental housing. Sometimes you get what you ask for. If you don't do, encourage them to do rental checks. If you're working with tenants, maybe that's something you can provide, is some kind of background check that a landlord would know they're getting a quality landlord without the expense of having to do that. Because we do have a lot of smaller property owners that don't really have additional resources, and they are trying to keep the rents low, or not low, but lower, affordable. And so I think that it would depend, it's so dependent on what your role is, and I'm overthinking it, I'm pretty sure. But I'd be happy to have a conversation if there's a specific organization that has a question about their role.
No, I think that's good response, gives us something to work with. Sorry, Rachel, or Ruby?
Just to go back to your earlier question, I just want to make sure, because I know Johnny's in the audience here, but U.S. Best Management Company is what we've been recognized for about the last number of years.
Thank you.
So I figured I better bring that back up, otherwise she's going to give me a lot of trouble.
One last question, and then I think we're out of time. Yep.
So this question says, what are some current things that the community or employers are doing to engage and orient new members or employees to live and stay in Muscatine? What are some current efforts for that?
Yeah, at the Chamber of Commerce, Rebecca's here as well, and lives in Trumbull. So we do a Live Muscatine. So individuals that come into Muscatine, they get a full-out orientation, and they get to learn more about our history, of Muscatine, what we have to offer in Muscatine, and yeah, just a lot. It's a great service that we offer, and I know that there's a couple other organizations that work with Rebecca and Lindsay as well with that. So that is one way that we do that.
Do you want to mention the interim series that you provided with the idea of connecting them more to Muscatine?
Yeah, the past couple of years, and I know Rebecca's back there, I believe. So we have over 100 interns that utilize the intern series, and it's just a great opportunity for them to go to the aquatic park, to go to deep lakes and just have fun networking with each other and learn more about, well, the whole plan is to have them plant their roots in Muscatine. If we can, and I talked to Mandy as well, but if we can get our interns at least to stay here and have a great experience, maybe they're going to start to rent within 2 to 3 years. There's opportunity that their roots are going to be strong here in Muscatine. They're going to want to buy it. I thought that was very good input.
I'll just add with that, we encourage our newer employees that moved into town that to get them part of Leadership Muscatine. I think that's a great way for a newcomer coming in to really get to understand more things. So appreciate what Brad and Chamber does with the Leadership Muscatine. That was kind of set idle for a couple of years, but it's back now. And I'm tickled to see that it's back because we learned so much about what the community is all about. So if you've got employees or different ones that are moving in, take advantage of it. I think that's a huge advantage for our people, especially if they're new in the community.
Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your engagement. Oh,
I have the call to action.
you do have the call to action.
Do that up here, Maureen.
Please, yeah, just go.
So the thing we're going to call you to action on the housing side of things is to participate in the comprehensive plan. There are 2 immediate and easy ways you can do that. You can scan this QR code up here or the QR code on your table, and it will take you to the Make It Muscatine Comprehensive Plan website. You can take the survey now, please do. And then there's an interactive map on there where you can share your issues and concerns. Again, you can do that now or anytime in the near future. And then in January, on the 22nd, at the Community Foundation offices at 5:30, we'll be having our next public meeting, which is emerging concepts, to kind of talk about what concepts do we want to pursue as the 2040 vision for the city of Muscatine.
We'll go ahead and shift gears here just a little bit. We're going to move to the topic of education, and we have a great panel here to kind of walk us through that. We'll start with a similar layout. Everyone will go through, introduce themselves, talk about what's going on in their own organizations and industries, and then have a few questions that we can ask. And the number is still available to text if there's any questions that you have that if we have time, we will certainly get to. If not during this panel, following this. So we'll go ahead and get started.
Great, thank you. Good morning, Clint Christopher, Superintendent. This is year 5 for me. And I want to say our panelists have agreed to donate some of their time to me, so I don't get the hook this morning. But I'm really proud of this district and this community. And one thing I say frequently is great schools make great communities, and great communities make great schools. It's a partnership, and we need both of those. And we're very fortunate here in Muscatine to have all the resources we need to help kids be successful. So I'm going to start with talking about some work that we did right after my first year here in the district around Portrait of a Graduate. And that took place at the high school. It involved staff, students, parents, and community members really talking about what do we want for our kids, what skills, what resources do they need to be successful when they graduate from high school. And it really aligns with our vision for the district around every student will excel in thinking, learning, achieving, and caring. And what you can see from that work and getting kind of input from a variety of stakeholders, you see that vision there, but you also see a lot of career exploration, job readiness, in addition to the graduation rate. So one of the things that the board has prioritized, that is from a leadership standpoint, we have prioritized, is really making sure kids are ready for what's next. And that's not a 4-year college or university for everyone. Sometimes it's a 2-year. Sometimes it's right into the world of work. And how do we ensure we're providing the resources and the supports necessary for all of them to be successful? And so as you look at one of the pieces there, that personalized pathway, it's going to look different, right? And certainly one of the things we know related to our student success at the high school level is for some kids, until they get more connected to the world of work, they just don't see it, the relevance, right? So the more we get them involved in work-based learning, in internships, in career exploration, the more it starts to, hey, this is important. I need to do this. And so we put a lot of focus on that, and we'll continue to do so. So a second piece of that we have had significant resources and dedicated time to is what we call our daily desired experiences. And so as we look at our students, our staff, and our families, how do they experience school every day when they cross the threshold of school? And these are the things that we want for them. And we know we're not necessarily going to hit the mark for every person every single day. But how do we continue to look at ways to improve? And so every year we do a survey of that to our families, to our staff, to our students, and we ask for their feedback. How are we doing on these indicators? And we have a spot for open comment where they can say anything they want. And then we take that information and we start to look at it from a district standpoint and a building standpoint so that we are building action plans based on the feedback that we're getting. So how do we keep getting better at this? Because it really starts our two, what I would say our two focus areas are instruction and the environment. And this DDE is a lot about the environment. It's about voice. It's about being recognized and celebrated and provided the right opportunities and resources. So again, this has been kind of a guiding document for us in a lot of the work that we've been doing recently. So I'm going to just talk about a few areas of success here. And I just mentioned that daily desired experience survey. We've seen the number of responses to that continue to go up. And it's something we really push with our staff. We need your feedback. We've created what we call a district environment committee that's representative of a variety of staff from all of our groups. So we have paraprofessionals there, we have lunch staff, we have bus drivers, and everybody's included in that, and where we're talking about these results and talking about how do we collectively create solutions that improve. And the three areas that came out from that work last year were around communication, discipline, and professional development. And so we've built some plans around that. We just finished the survey for this year. So we're in the process of kind of collecting all that information. And then in January, we're going to present that to the board. We're going to push that out to our buildings. And those groups are going to get back together. We're going to look at, here's the work that we've done. Here's what people are saying. What adjustments do we need to make to continue to get better and better? Some other areas around graduation. In that Portrait of a Graduate this year, we started an alternative program for the high school, which we haven't had in a number of years. We call that the MCAT program. It serves about 30 students. These are juniors and seniors who are really at risk of not graduating and not crossing the threshold. It's a smaller environment, really focused on relationships and providing the supports and resources they need to be successful. So we're really excited to get that program off and running, and great things are happening there. We've got some dedicated staff that are really passionate about helping those kids. And then as we continue to move forward, building on that program kind of across the high school, and how do kids move into that from the junior high into the high school and so on. Work-based learning and internships, this continues to be an area that we've been focusing on, again, connecting students to the world of work in a variety of ways, getting them out into our businesses to experience those things and understand, what's involved in being successful at work. And so again, we're continuing to work with and we're very fortunate to have great partners in the community where we can continue to grow this. So it's certainly an area of success. And as we look at, again, those things that hit that portrait of a graduate, I want to highlight our ag program and our FFA program. So it is the largest FFA program in the state of Iowa. Was recognized as the best in the state this year from our Ag Educators Association. And it also was recognized from Region 3, which there are 6 regions across the U.S. And we were selected as best program from Region 3, which is like most of the Midwest states. So Minnesota, North and South Dakota, Missouri, Illinois, and Nebraska, I believe. So again, when you think about ag programs, you know, we're the heartland, right? And we were the winner of that ag program of the year. What I'm really proud of, we have an outstanding staff in that program. What I'm proud of is over 90, I think it's 95%, but certainly over 90% of those kids don't live on farms, right? And that's a huge credit to what they're developing within the school and the programs. Every year I get to go to their banquet where they recognize students for all of the things they've done throughout the year, but they recognize seniors there. And every year we have kids going to 4-year universities, kids going right into the world of work. So when we think about that portrait of a graduate, it's a great example of what we're trying to accomplish, right? It is an outstanding program. And then the last, or another piece around that, and I call it Diploma Plus. And again, that's our focus on beyond just getting a diploma and graduating for high school. We want you to have college credit. We want you to have college experiences. We want you to have a workplace learning certificate. Something more than just the diploma. And we're seeing that continue to grow in terms of the number of students who are part of career academies, which Naomi will talk about, and earning college credit. It's just an area that we continue to develop and grow, and we're seeing a lot of success through that. And then a couple of other programs I just want to mention is our dual language program. Right now that serves students up through 2nd grade. We started the pre-K level. We continue to add on a year each year, so typically about 25 students, and that's a voluntary program. We're seeing great success in that. It's another area where we've seen some families that live outside of the district that choose to come here because of that program. So we're really proud of that. And then I think we're also going to talk a little bit about Spark, and Kim's going to talk a little bit about that. But that's our summer program, really serves any student over the summer. One of the things we know about achievement gaps in education is the gap doesn't widen during the school year. It widens outside of that when we send kids home for summer or long breaks, right? Where it's an opportunity that they're missing. Where a lot of times we're taking our kids to museums and we're taking our kids to the ballpark. We're doing different things with them that are exposing them to an academic vocabulary and experience that they don't always get. And because we have over 50% of our students free and reduced lunch, it's an opportunity gap. And so Spark has been a huge asset to our district and to those kids, but it's open to any student. So it kind of removes that context of I have to go to summer school because whatever, fill in the blank, right? It's open to everybody, and we have great community participation. So it's really been a very successful program for us. One of the pieces I do want to talk about, we've touched a little bit on population. I think Rich had mentioned it as well. Our enrollment is declining, and it has been for a very, very long time. When you look at that over time, we lose about 2% of our students each year on average. Now, there's a perception sometimes that we're losing kids to open enrollment or we're losing kids to private schools, virtual schools, and that's not really the case. That number of private school open enrollment has stayed very stable over the same period of time. One of the biggest factors in that is birth rate. Our birth rate here in this community is declining at 2.5% per year. So as that goes down, as your population coming into kindergarten gets smaller and smaller, right, that feeds the whole system. So right now we graduate about 375 students from the high school every year. Our kindergarten class coming in is about 300. So just year to year, new kids coming in, kids graduating and moving on, we're down 75 kids, right? So this has been a challenge for us, and certainly one we continue to focus on, but it also has a lot to do with housing, right? We live in a, what I would call aging in place community. People are very happy to live here in Muscatine. They don't want to move. They love their house, right? So they stay. And there's just not that turnover, right? And this is an enrollment challenge, but it's also, I'll talk about a little bit later, a perception challenge. That means typically in any community, 78 to 80% of your community has no connections to school anymore. So they're making judgments and have perceptions about school they don't really have a connection around. So this number, as we look at that aging in place, as that happens, your community gets older, that 70% gets closer to 75 to 80%. So that's a big challenge in terms of how do we communicate and connect to that, and we'll certainly talk about that. And then the last piece I want to share with you is just the work we've done around how do we target and look at success in the school district, because it's not just one sport. There's a variety of things, and really, so we've created this vision card that we work through every year. We share with the board, share out with the community, and it's really focused on three main areas. It's on graduation, it's on achievement, or what we call standards attainment, and also the environment, right? So our DDE results are in here. Graduation, are we getting kids in different grade levels kind of on track to graduate? So we're monitoring all that. We're looking at our state test results. All of that is factored in, and we've created some levels there. And what I can tell you is we're not there. We got a long ways to go. We have a lot of work to do. But over these past 3 years, and again, those scores will kind of vary up and down each year. But what we've seen over these 3 years is consistent growth in almost all of those categories. And so when you're doing the right things, you're going to see that, right? It's not by chance. It's not random. Good things are happening. We have an amazing staff. We have great leadership and a dedicated school board, and we're moving in the right direction. Again, that doesn't mean we're there, and we've got a long ways to go. I'll talk a little bit more about that as we move forward, but very proud of the work that's being done. And then the last piece I'll say, and what I'm most proud of as a superintendent, as a parent, is we don't get to choose who crosses our threshold every day at school. Kids come and we serve them, and they come in a variety of formats, in a variety of needs. And the one thing that I'm proud of is that we can serve those students at a high level, any student. And I know our board is committed to that, and we have the right staff, and we're moving things in the right direction.
So my comments will revolve around three main points: access, access, and access. So the first topic I want to talk about is concurrent enrollment. Concurrent enrollment are opportunities that high school students have to start to take college classes. And it can come in many different forms. It can mean a student takes a college class in the high school for a faculty or a teacher who will be vetted. It can be a student who takes an online course. It can be a student who comes to campus to take a course. The graph that you see behind me shows the 6 schools that Muscatine services and the growth in concurrent enrollment over the last several years. These opportunities for students come at no cost to them. So Muscatine High School seniors, 75% of Muscatine High School seniors had a concurrent enrollment experience. We know that in fiscal year 23, 464 Muscatine High School students took about 1,500 credit hours total. And if you just equate that to the tuition that they've saved their families, it's $624,000. That's just Muscatine High School students saving on their tuition. So imagine the freedom that they have when they graduate from high school to make choices to further their education. We know that an average student in our district
take 16 credits while they're still in high school. So that's generally about one semester putting them ahead. Picture of the career advancement? Oh, yes. So in our previous video, we showed a picture of the Career Advancement Center. This is now the second fall that that's been open. It was a $10 million investment in the community made possible by a bond that taxpayers voted on for our entire district. The Career Advancement Center at Muscatine allows us to offer the programs that you see listed here, many in healthcare, but we've also added some career and technical education programs in criminal justice, automotive, and HVAC. And these programs are offered to students in a career academy format. So we actually have 15 options for students, Muscatine High School included, usually they're juniors or seniors, to enroll in a career academy. So that is a focused program that's usually about 15 or 16 credits, and it leads to a certificate. So these students earn a certified nurse aide certificate. They earn a basic welding certificate. They have the option of earning ServSafe certification. So what Clint was talking about, Diploma Plus, is the system that we've built together that gives high school students this credential that is of real world value. For the first time in the history of MCC, and MCC is almost 100 years old, we've been able to add a registered nurse program as an option for our students. So this spring, we will have our first RN students graduate. Prior to that, they were only able to do certified nurse aide, LPN, which are all great starting points, but really we had been wanting to add the RN for many, many years. The addition of the labs in here, the classrooms, the simulation equipment allowed us to bring this to fruition. Construction will be added as a career academy option this fall. And this is in support of the housing efforts that are happening in the community. We will have students, high school juniors and seniors, able to work on a real world problem in the community, get experience that they can immediately employ. And I think that's really the sweet spot for our career and technical education programs that we found. Go on to that. Skipping that. Foundation scholarships. Okay. So the last point I want to make is the incredible opportunities our students have to receive funding. I mentioned the $465,000 that is already saved by Muscatine High School students by getting a head start. But in addition to that, we know that our community is generous. We've talked about all of the private, public funded projects. They're generous to our high school students as well. So Muscatine has its own foundation, and annually we provide students up with $425,000 of scholarship funds. We use the Community Foundation portal so that it's easy for high school students to go to one spot to apply for various scholarships. We offer a connections scholarship, so students who have taken concurrent enrollment, like we talked about before, participated in a career academy, can earn up to half off of their tuition in the first year after high school. So they've had a free experience in high school. They can get up to half off with this connection scholarship. Layered on top of that can be any amount of foundation scholarship, and you're really looking at the financial barrier being removed. Community Foundation also offers scholarships to high school students, and almost $500,000 worth were awarded last year. The state of Iowa supports students in high demand fields through the Last Dollar Scholarship Program, and Just recent numbers I found, so in the state, it was almost $8 million that was provided in last dollar scholarships to students. At EICC, it's about $500,000. So there are a lot of financial opportunities for students to take that next step in high school and after high school.
I'm Kim Warren. And I got my slide to go. I'm the Director of Aligned Impact Muscatine County. We're housed at United Way, Muscatine County, and we focus on improving outcomes for students and families cradle to career by aligning community resources. We work with a lot of community partners. So I get the privilege today to talk to you about 4 examples of the way the community has really wrapped itself around education initiatives in our community. So I'm going to start early at birth. The nation, the state, our county is in a child care crisis. The map I pulled up for you, HHS has a really nice dashboard that you can go to, but basically what it shows is we're dark orange, that's the worst. If you look at how many kids need child care in our community, and that factors in working parents, parent choice, and look at how many slots we have staffed, not licensed, how many slots we have staffed, we have about 2 to 1. If all of the childcare providers were fully staffed, that would add an additional 200 spaces immediately to our community. The 2 to 1 ratio is for all ages. If you drill down to infants, if anyone has had an infant recently, you know that's even harder. The ratio's 4 infants to every 1 space available in our community. So childcare isn't just an early education issue, it's really an everyone issue. It affects people's choice for employment. It impacts whether people decide to move here or not. If they cannot find space for their child to be cared for here, the likeliness of them living here is low. So parents and families are making choices about employment based on the childcare situation in our community. And businesses know this, and we have had some movement with some businesses really getting behind this and supporting it. Stanley Consultants partnered with the MCC Foundation to offer scholarships for the child development classes that child care providers need to take to be free. The cost of that training is cost prohibitive for employees, for child care providers. The math kind of doesn't work for the cost of child care. So that I think has been a great step in the right direction on the quality piece. In 2022, because H&I has been part of a community coalition, they were eligible to apply for some state grants that were able to briefly free up some childcare spaces in our community. But childcare continues to be a challenge, and there is a group kind of doing some more momentum on that. And if we have time during the Q&A, I'll dig into that a little bit more. The next thing I'm going to talk about is Spark. I could talk about Spark for about an hour, so I'm really going to try and rein it in here because it's one of my favorite parts of my job. So Clint brought a group of us together the beginning of 2021 and said, we have these federal COVID dollars. We should create a premier child summer learning experience in our community. Like Clint said, not the traditional summer school that kids have to go to. I think the fact that about 400 kids enroll is a testament to it doesn't have the stigma of normal summer school. In the morning, there's reading, math, writing, kind of what you think about a little bit more traditional schooling. In the afternoon, the kids take fun classes. They may be learning about owls, they may be learning about water, they're doing hands-on experiments, they're doing career exploration. So I'm going to give a couple examples within what you see up here. So we got 35 unique experiences scheduled for push-ins from community-based organizations and businesses over the 5-week program. That was from 20 different partners and served 400 students. The goal of the program, like Clint said, is really to reduce that experience gap and address summer slide. A couple examples of how organizations have reallocated their resources. So, this isn't just about the federal money or the state money coming in. Organizations have reallocated how they spend their money during the summer to support this. So, for example, ISU Extension and Outreach holds those kind of daily camps, really hard for working parents to get their kids to, maybe 10 kids register for that. But they've embedded their STEM curriculum into this, and they're able to serve hundreds of students now every summer. County Conservation, again, they run their normal camp program that can be a challenge for all families to access, be it cost, be it transportation, be it time. but they push into so many classes. So now instead of them serving, maybe 100 kids during the summer, they're serving an additional 400. They also take advantage of the state's externship program, and they hire teachers during the summer through the externship program to do the push-ins during class. Muscatine Power and Water does the exact same thing to expand their staff capacity during the summer to support Spark, as well as having their interns push in. And Kent does the same thing with their interns. One of the stories that many of you heard, but I'm going to tell it again because most of you in the room hasn't, is that picture of the kids covered in oobleck. GPC food scientists come in every summer as a part of one of the science classes, and they do oobleck and they read a book. And I went to go hang out with the kids, right? Because I kind of mill around in the afternoons checking in on everybody. And I start playing with the oobleck because I can't help myself. And one of the little girls says to me, "Are you another food scientist we're meeting today?" And I said, "No." And I didn't until a couple years ago even know what a food scientist was. So this very early career exploration that we're doing with these kids is working. And I just think it's really impressive that we have 20 community-based organizations and businesses that reallocate their resources or expand their resources during the summer to support this program. So we all know third grade reading is highly important. It is one of the biggest predictors of high school graduation. And when we were seeing, reading scores not bouncing back post-COVID, we asked elementary principals, like, what do you need? How can the community help you? And what we heard from a couple principals, one of which is at Madison, is we need just more adults in the classroom to help with our small group reading time. Different schools kind of do it different. Madison really heavily put their resources towards kindergarten. And what they saw was a 33% increase from fall to spring FAST assessments, that's a lit literacy assessment. When they compared that before they had reading mentors, they had 9% growth. And then when we look at the most recent school year, just over 90% of their kindergartners were reading at bench level by the end of the school year. That's huge. That is something that some other schools are doing now too, and we're looking to grow. Shameless plug, Hillary can get you signed up with any classroom. Go to volunteermuscatine.org if you're interested in volunteering. It's once a week, and the volunteers get a lot out of it too. And the final thing I'm going to talk about is summer melt, and that's something Naomi talked about, how we have a lot of students who intend to go on to post-secondary something, but then they don't show up in the fall. Depending on the graduating class, it's 50 to 100 students, but that's a lot, especially year over year over year. And so we worked with the school districts in the county, ISU Extension Outreach, MCC, and we reached out to students and said, like, what is going on? And they said, there's no one to help us during the summer. If we get pulled for FAFSA verification, if I don't understand how and what to do for orientation, if I maybe didn't apply to MCC and I meant to, but now it's July and I haven't, like, they don't know where to go to get help. We have a lot of students whose families are extremely supportive of them going on to get education and training, but they did not go through that system and they don't know how to support their student through it. FAFSA was a dumpster fire last year. It seems to be, fingers crossed, it's going smoother this year, but that caused a lot of problems for a lot of families, and they need support. So what did we do about it? So we found that students really like to work with near-peer mentors. So we partnered with people already embedded within organizations like ISU Extension Outreach, MCC, and then also within our own office, who are currently in the college system or recently removed from it, many of which are bilingual that provide that support. Students would much rather work with a near peer than someone that looks like their mother to help them through that process, especially because they're going through it too and they can offer advice. What does it look like to transfer from MCC to University of Iowa if I'm interested in it? So we have these mentors that work with students and families during the summer, help get them on track. So over the past 4 summers, 59 students have been served, and those students got help accessing over $76,000 worth of dollars. So all the stuff now we just mentioned, the Last Dollar Scholarship, the FAFSA, the other scholarships, we were able to help students access, so they were able to go on to post-secondary education. The Iowa College Aid recently did a research project on this program, and we're happy to say that they showed that students that participated in this program were more likely to file the FAFSA. They were more likely to enroll in college, and they considered all factors like family income, gender, race, and none of it made any different. This program had proven impact for all students. I'm going to turn it over to Rich.
Me again, sorry, you gotta listen to me again. But I want to challenge the businesses, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the business perspective and what we do with it here for the community and for the school systems, AIM and all the different things. But I want to challenge the businesses in this room to step up to where, offer up some of your people to go help, or bring some kids into your school or into the business to get them to understand what your business is about. Use the different things that the school system has to help them. You've seen some of the comments that were mentioned. We get involved in a lot of different avenues, and it's purpose for that. One is that's our future employees that we're looking to hire. So we want them to be exposed to what the business is about, so they get that feel, and more so to encourage them. Hey, it might be good to go to the post-secondary, get some additional degrees and different things to work with. Things that I was listening here, that's a lot of the stuff here that the school system does. I went through as FFA member for many years, and then up 4-H member as well, and then got into a junior college before I went to the 4-year college, and all those things. That's all right here. We have the right systems in place. We just need to make sure we all take advantage of it and help the educational system really step up in what we can do to help support them. And to give you a little bit of an idea of some of the things that we look at from an education standpoint, on these slides here, we actually supported junior achievement. A lot of you, I'm sure, are familiar with junior achievement, so we got some of the people here to do a fantastic job for those kids. This happens to be the JA Titan program. And it's really kind of interesting. We started hosting that the last couple of years at GPC, and more so get kids come in, see what some of the business, what facilities kind of look like, so they get a chance to come in. This happens to be the JA of the Heartland competition, but ended up the first year I think we had about 7, 8 teams. The next year we're at 12, and I'm sure it's going to be more than that the next time around. But the kids come in and they run a computer simulated business. And it's kind of unique to, I'd love to have our business people and the company to kind of go through the same model, just see how we compare. But it allows them to make decisions from all different standpoints about manufacturing. And this last year happened to be manufacturing a cell phone. So they have to figure out what's the cost to manufacture it. Okay, and then how much money are you going to put into marketing? How much are you going to put into sales? What kind of decisions that you have to make in order to make this business operate? They run the simulator, and then they got some more decisions that they have to make. They run the simulator again, and then at the end it spits out who made the most profitable amount of business when they sold those cell phones. That's exactly what goes on in business, no matter what the business is. You have to think about how those processes work. And this was really exciting to see the kids really get involved with it. And JA offers scholarships in for the winning teams as far as the different kids that's gone through it. In fact, one of the schools, I think it was Burlington, the first year they brought in a team, the next year they brought in 4 teams. And that's how much of the excitement that's gotten into it. So if you're not involved with some of these things, please reach out and try to get involved with them. The other thing that we try to do, and this is kind of a small pieces of what we do, but we try to get involved in a lot of different ways with expanding our support within the school system. But so we started bringing in, as far as a couple of the IT apprenticeships that we brought in from the school system. So we bring high school kids in and work side by side with our IT departments for the whole program as far as with the apprenticeship to learn what goes on within the IT world, in the real world. So they get exposure before they even get out of high school, what that looks like. And these kids, it's a paid apprenticeship, just like it would be for our college apprenticeships. But it's a great program that's just gotten kicked off for us. That we did one the first year, we're in a couple now, we're continuing to look at growing that piece of it. Our HR department does a great job of really trying to hone in and work with the kids and find out what the pieces are. Working with Clinton and his staff as far as getting the right curriculum and what right things that we need to connect with to make that work. So those apprenticeships are a great experience for the kids. And it's got to be, all of us as a community trying to help out these kids in apprenticeships, I think it'd be a home run for us to try to work through those things. In addition, we started doing some externships. I don't know if you've heard about what an externship is, But that's where you bring a teacher into your business over the summertime. And we've done that a couple different times, bringing teachers in. You got the one there on the left that came in to help at the cat litter plants and work through some things. And the other one that's down there at the bottom right with Marcia McGill came in and actually helped us draft up a safety protocols for our plant. So she went through the whole business, and they're getting paid for this from our end as well. And they are actually doing on-job work that we like to see done, and it's a gaining experience for them, but it's also gaining some things for us. So it's a great partnership to work back and forth for a win-win all the way around. So I think those things have been a big part for what we tried to do and accomplish to try to help. The other thing, I just got up here the picture of the Ag Learning Center. The tremendous asset for this community to have that Ag Learning Center. I happened to be on the board when it first got built and was helping to get things established on it, and a great experience for all those kids. And I understand why it's so important for the kids and that their programs expanded, because it's exciting for them. And that to have a program with 5 ag teachers in Muscatine, the largest in this area and the best in the region, is phenomenal. We need to continue to build upon those things. In fact, they're in the middle of expanding onto the building. This is where they can actually, kids get experience with live animals. To bring the horses in, the cattle in, the different things, hogs and different things along that line. So they're looking at actually expanding that, and we're helping on that piece of it to expand for small animals. So now they can bring in the sheep, the goats, the chickens, and all the other things and have hands-on experience. And most of the kids will take those animals to the county fair, and they even take them to the state fair. And what an experience for them, to see all those type of things that go on. So if you haven't gotten involved in this as a business, I think you're missing the boat on a lot of opportunities for those kids to get to know what you're all about too. So I would highly suggest that to give that a chance and see what you can try to do to help their school system. The other thing I'll add is just with what Kim does with AIM, that we get involved on that piece of it. And she's really honing in on the data side of things for the whole county as far as all the school systems. And that's important to have data. We do that all the time in the business side, looking at data. But having the data is the first and primary priority that you need to have, is get that data. But the second thing is interpreting the data and have somebody that understands analytics to work through that. So we're offering up some support on our end to try to get some of our people that are in the data analytics. What can we look at our analysts and analyze this data to see how can we improve? So those are different things that you can try to get involved with to try to help the systems out, make it a community event from the education standpoint.
Thank you. There's been so many wonderful things that we discussed. I think we have just a few minutes here. I want to pose just one question, and for any of you to answer, and that is, what kind of opportunities that do you think still exist within this space, and what are some of the resources that you might need to take the next steps on those opportunities?
I've got a lot of good things yet to talk about, so this is kind of tough. But one of the things, certainly from, a data standpoint, our graduation rate, our assessment results, we're seeing some really strong improvements in those areas. But one piece that I do want to mention, a success, we talk about, I think Rachel, you talked about Maslow's needs hierarchy. Well, there's the same thing for school. Kids have to, they have to feel safe. They have to be, fed, all those pieces before they can learn, but they also have to be at school. And when I started here in this district, and this is even prior to COVID, the chronic absentee rate in this district was over 30%. So that meant 1 out of every 3 students was missing 10% of the school year after year, right? That's a huge issue that needed to be addressed. So we put a lot of resources to that, internal staff resources and a lot of supports around that. And what I can tell you is currently it's at 14%.
Wow.
So the difference in that is 900 students are no longer chronically absent. 900. The other benefit of that work is that on average, so when you look at all of our students, not just the chronically absent, our average student attends 5 more days of school. And you add that year after year after year, that makes a huge impact. And that's a credit to our staff because it is hard work. There's a lot to that, a lot of follow-up, because it's really about how do we eliminate barriers for families to help them be successful. But I also have to give a lot of credit to Jim Berry, our county attorney, because He is a partner with us in this, mediating with families and working through that process to win.
Thank you. There's been so many wonderful things that we discussed. I think we have just a few minutes here. I want to pose just one question and for any of you to answer, and that is, what kind of opportunities that do you think still exist within this space, and what are some of the resources that you might need to take the next steps on those opportunities?
I've got a lot of good things yet to talk about, so this is kind of tough. But one of the things, certainly from, a data standpoint, our graduation rate, our assessment results, we're seeing some really strong improvements in those areas. But one piece that I do want to mention, a success, we talk about, I think Rachel, you talked about Maslow's needs hierarchy. Well, there's the same thing for school. Kids have to, they have to feel safe. They have to be, fed, all those pieces before they can learn, but they also have to be at school. And when I started here in this district, and this is even prior to COVID, the chronic absentee rate in this district was over 30%. So that meant 1 out of every 3 students was missing 10% of the school year, year after year, right? That's a huge issue that needed to be addressed. So we put a lot of resources to that, internal staff resources and a lot of supports around that. And what I can tell you is currently it's at 14%.
Wow.
So the difference in that is 900 students are no longer chronically absent. 900. The other benefit of that work is that on average, so when you look at all of our students, not just the chronically absent, our average student attends 5 more days of school. And you add that year after year after year, that makes a huge impact. And that's a credit to our staff because it is hard work. There's a lot to that, a lot of follow-up. Because it's really about how do we eliminate barriers for families to help them be successful. But I also have to give a lot of credit to Jim Berry, our county attorney, because he is a partner with us in this, mediating with families and working through that process to ensure they're getting kids to school. And you don't have that in a lot of other communities. It's state law now. And I can already tell you, there are districts that I talk to that their county attorney said, well, good luck, because I'm not doing this, right? We are very fortunate here, and it's made a huge impact. And that ultimately will impact some of those other factors. I also want to talk about school safety. It's something we have to continue to keep a focus on. We are very fortunate here, our relationship with Muscatine PD, with the Sheriff's Department, with all of our emergency responders in the support that they give to us. They take everything seriously, as do we, and we rely on their experience and expertise. And I can tell you in situations, they respond quickly, and that's what it takes. So I'm very proud of that. And in addition to that, the focus that we put on mental health for all of our students and supports are needed there. The last piece I'll just touch on briefly, it comes back to that perception and knowing that 70 to 80% of our community has no connection to school. So where are they hearing information? Well, it's probably on social media. And I can't tell you that 100% of that information they receive is false, but I can guarantee you 100% of that information is not true, right? And so it is about communication and getting our story out there, but it's also about that volunteer piece and getting people into school. Whether it's Big Brothers, Big Sisters, Junior Achievement, United Way, the Reading Buddies, what I can tell you is when people have that experience, they tell me, man, your kids are great. Man, that was a great class. I really enjoyed that experience. And so the more we can give those opportunities to people, the more they'll see those pieces. And I've got a bunch more stuff, but I better stop.
Yeah, just a reminder that we are able to still text questions that we can send and we will follow up to answer. Clint gets to answer all of them. We're gonna send all of them. Thanks, it's got so much to share. But we'll make sure that we can get back to you guys with those responses and make sure that we can get the information from the panel to each of you. If you guys can help me thank the panel, everyone that was up here for everything.
Well, hello again. I'd like to take the next 10 or 15 minutes or so and allow for some discussion amongst your table. I think there's been some really great discussion before the session started, at break. I know I got pulled into some really interesting discussions on the housing piece, but we wanted to give you an opportunity within your tables to have some dialogue about the topics we've covered. So go ahead and just put a roll up. Since we're running a little short on time, so take the next 10 minutes or so to have some discussion amongst your team. I want to focus on 2 questions. First one, hopefully be fairly quick to get through, but share what's a topic that we discussed so far today that just really stood out to you the most and why. Again, a lot of these themes that we've talked about probably are not new to you if you've been in the community for a while, but maybe something really jumped out. Maybe with some of the statistics that were mentioned when it relates to housing or education that really just jumped out at you. Why is that important to you? Share that with your table. And then 2, I think is really important is think about and talk about with your table what specifically could you personally and or your organization do to assist with the priorities of housing and education that we've identified and talked about today. You heard Rich share some of the things that Kent Corp is doing. There are a lot of organizations that are doing stuff related to this. What can you personally or your organization, when you go back to your office today, can you take back and start implementing to help assist with these priorities going forward? So